COVID-19 shut down the legislature, but a special session is on the horizon to take care of some state business that just cannot wait. With us today, two state senators, Gary Winfield, a Democrat, and John Kissel, a Republican. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us here today.
My pleasure, Mr. House.
And Senator Winfield, I'll begin with you because someone said to me, well, what difference does it make if the legislature doesn't meet? How are voters impacted by the lack of a legislative session?
Well, I think the legislature just generally should be meeting so that the voices of the voters can be heard. But specifically on the issue that Senator Kissel and I are working on currently, I think this is a particular moment in time, and the legislature should be responsive to the people. And the way to do that is to come into session and meet.
Do you agree with that, Senator Kissel? Have the voters suffered at all by not having a legislature in session?
I'm a little hesitant on Senator Winfield's position in that I think we probably could do better work after we get past the COVID virus issue. God willing, people get reelected in January. We could have more open and clear public hearings. That being said, I appreciate the hard work that he and Representative Staffstrom, the other co-chair, and my colleague, Representative Rosa Rabimbis, have we put in, I would say, Gary, 60 hours into this bill.
Sure.
So, hey, let's go have a public hearing as best we can virtually. I have a colleague in another capacity that just had a virtual medical visit, so it's possible.
So walk us through, Senator Winfield, I'll begin with you on this part. Walk us through what we're going to be hearing about during this special session.
So my understanding of the special session are there are two things we are definitely hearing about, and the governor came out very recently and added two things to it. We were talking about police accountability, which is directly what the Judiciary Committee is talking about. In addition to that, we were talking about absentee ballots. As you know, the governor had an executive order dealing with the primary, but the legislature would be coming in to deal with the general election. We would also be dealing with, I know I'm going to forget one of them at all. Always happens that way, but we would be dealing with issue of I knew that was going to happen. Insurance.
Is it insulin?
Insulin. Thank you, Senator Kissel. And so they're important issues. I just want to make one comment though. With COVID-19, there are things that have happened that I think that the legislature should deal with now and not in the future, because if we're hit with the second wave, we want to be prepared to deal with those things going forward.
Senator Kissel, let's talk about this police accountability bill.
Yeah, I mean, we put a ton of work into this, and there's a lot of compromises. I've got to just commend my colleagues in the leadership of the Judiciary Committee. I think we all highly respect one another, and we wanted to put our very best foot forward. There's just stuff in this bill that I have concerns with. I've gotten calls from police union presidents, other folks in my district, and, you can't return the federal equipment, and there's a lot of glitches in the bill itself. But it's a huge, I think it's 67 pages, effort to step forward. And I'd rather see Connecticut be a leader than not a leader, but I may end up having to come back from my vacation, sadly, and vote no on a bill that I spent huge amounts of time on. But, hey, that's how government works.
Senator Winfield, what's your response to that?
I think the bill is important, and I recognize that there are people who have issues with it, particularly some of the police organizations. But I think what we're trying to do with this bill is important, not only for this moment, but it's been important for a long time, and we haven't had the ability to do it. One of the issues that is most opposed is the issue of qualified immunity. But what we know is that the public has a feeling, and it is true that largely when the types of things that we've seen on video happen, we don't see what should be the expected consequences. And so what we're trying to do is create a bill in which the public has confidence that should someone go through the process, should they have, in the case of qualified immunity, violated someone's civil rights, and you've hit the threshold that's necessary to demonstrate that there exists the possibility that there are real consequences for those actions.
Senator Kissel, I want to ask you about absentee ballots, because a lot of people are saying that they might be abused, the whole system. What do you think about that?
Well, I sort of agree with my leader, Senator Len Fasano. He issued a press release this week. I think to just randomly send out applications to everybody on old voter rolls opens yourself up to possible abuse and fraud. I think if people are afraid of the COVID virus and want to do an absentee ballot, the usual process of making an application to get the absentee ballot, I think, works for me. So I think that the proposal that the Secretary of State, Denise Merrill, put forward just goes too far and doesn't have enough safeguards to protect what's extraordinarily valuable in our state. That's the right to vote and the right to be tried by a jury. Those are the two pillars that I think our democracy stands on.
Senator Winfield, what do you think of that, of absentee ballots?
So what we know is there are states that have been doing absentee ballots for a very long time. And when this state has endeavored to have a conversation about absentee ballots, no excuse absentee balloting, even absent COVID-19, the very same thoughts have been expressed that we're likely to have voter fraud. What we've seen in other states would tell us that that's not a very likely outcome. I understand where people's perspective is, but as an individual legislator, I don't have an issue with it. We've seen it play out in states. We know what is likely to happen, and I think the state should actually move forward to increase the franchise for people.
I want to ask both of you, gentlemen, whoever wants to jump in first. The governor has to choose someone to join the Supreme Court, state Supreme Court. What do you think of that? Who should it be? What type of justice should he be looking for?
Gary, you can go first on that one.
I'll let you go, Senator Winfield, on that first.
Well, I will say that is a question I was not expecting. I think it's somebody who has obviously the experience, but I also think one of the things that I've discovered in my time of interviewing judges in general is that they're not all, and this would seem not to be the case, right? But they're not all ready to answer the question of what does justice mean? And we actually, a few years ago, had a judge who was really stumped and said that justice has nothing to do with the law. And so I think that's a simple question, but it's an important question. It gives you a perspective. We look for all of the things we always look for: demeanor, comportment, all of that. But I think an understanding of what justice is important, and how they can articulate that back to the public, so we have a sense of what it is they're on the bench to do.
Senator Winfield, do you believe it should be a person of color appointed to the High Court?
I think that's an important consideration. I don't know that it's a necessity.
Senator Kissel, what's your take on this? Who do you think the governor should select? You don't have to name any names, but what type of justice?
Yeah, we have a pretty, in some respects moderate, but in other respects left of center Supreme Court here in Connecticut. So I would be delighted to see someone that's maybe moderate or right of center. That would be refreshing. I think it would be a good balance to the state Supreme Court. Now, their racial, ethnic, gender, all of that other criteria, I think is up for grabs. But philosophically, I'd like to see someone that believes more in limited government than very widespread use of government to achieve social ends.
Senator John Kissel, Senator Gary Winfield, we thank you so much for joining us. Have a great weekend, Senators. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.